Welcome to another episode of Just Some More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justmorefix.com or on Twitter at justsomemorefix. If you like us, head over to iTunes or to Google Play and give us a rating and a comment. In this episode, we're going to talk about broke-ass gaming. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Alan Grisby from the Strange and Unusual podcast, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual host. Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to another episode of Just Some More Fix. That's how the intro goes.
It was good.
Yeah, I know.
Nailed it.
I don't think we have any announcements today. Today's topic kind of comes out of the free RPG day vein, I suppose. For those of you that don't know what free RPG day is, it's a game where gaming stores get shipped lots of products to give away, and they are generally custom designed for free RPG day. They change every year, and not every company participates every year. So,
But they should.
I agree. There's lots of good stuff that gets put out. That's actually the important thing, though, is it's not just garbage. It's actually really general. Most of the stuff that I have seen is nice, pretty good entry level games to kind of introduce you to a gaming system or a gaming world. So
Well, it's like good advertising, right? Like people may not spend money on your book if they've never bought anything from you before, but if you give it to them for free, odds are they will pick it up and look at it. And
Right.
if it doesn't suck, maybe they'll buy some of your stuff.
No, I agree. It's an easy way to try new games at very little risk other than spending the time and being like, well, that was no fun. But maybe we got a good story out of it. So, all right. Well, in that same free RPG day vein, what?
Marsupial-Lions.
Oh God. In that same vein, there's a pretty big barrier to entry for RPGs. Not only in terms of trying to find people to game with if you don't already have friends that are into tabletop games, but just the sheer cost of it is pretty high.
Especially if the only place you have around you that's carrying books is Barnes & Noble, and everything there costs more anyway.
Right.
And now you're trying to buy your RPG books there too.
Right. So thankfully there's Amazon now, but when I first started gaming years and years ago, we got all of our gaming books from Walden Books, which isn't even a store anymore, you know. But I can't even remember what we were paying for players' handbooks back then.
I feel like it was in the ballpark of $30.
I want to say 20 or 25 is what I was going to guess. I think most of the hardback D&D second edition books were mostly $19.99, I believe. And I believe a box set may have been 25 or 30, I think.
I don't know. I'm in the third edition world. I'm pretty sure they were between 25 and 30.
Now, the third edition books, they were more expensive.
Like
but at the time,
there was nothing else.
Well, yeah. Well, no, there was a few other games, but they weren't available on the shelves.
No, so that's it. The place you bought your books, there was nothing else. There may have been other things, but you couldn't have gotten them if you wanted
Right.
to.
Well, the other thing was in our town where we lived, Barnes & Noble was the only place that you could go to get gaming books.
Exactly.
If you went to Champaign, there were gaming stores there, like full-line, actual regular gaming stores. But at the time, I don't even think we were able to drive.
Right.
So, it was like, all right, we're going to ride our bicycles to the mall, and then we'll go into Walden Books, and we will pool our meager resources together. And, after mowing 10 lawns, we could buy...
the act of trying to acquire Dungeons & Dragons books could be the plot of a Tales from the Loop game.
It totally could. That would be awesome. But, I'm serious. Like, I mowed a fair amount of lawns for money back in the day because I had a lot of elderly people lived in our neighborhood. So I cut grass for $10 a lawn or whatever it was, and you save up enough money eventually, and then we can make a trip to the mall, usually on the bicycles, and
maybe somebody's parents love them enough to buy the books for them. But like when they came out for you, it was during that Dungeons and Dragons
Satanic Panic.
Evil.
Yeah, so
Mine was a little later, but
Yeah.
like this was back when families weren't really like routinely giving gift cards to preteens and teenagers.
Oh,
You
right.
got like a movie that's designed for an 8-year-old for your 12th birthday from your grandmother.
yeah, my mom would have never bought me a D&D book ever. She was in the full-on throes of Oprah's Satanic Panic. So, yeah.
The Satanic Panic Book Club.
Yeah, it was not good. I actually used to have to hide my board games, not my board games, hide my role playing game
Everything
books.
but Monopoly. You
Well,
hid the game, hid the
so-
books inside the Monopoly box because nobody was opening that.
Here's the best part of this whole thing, and I think I've probably told you this story before, but what got us started into Dungeons and Dragons was my mom bought me this board game called Dungeon, and there were 4 or 5 different classes you played, and you moved around from level to level and fought bad guys and got treasure. But it was just a board game. There was nothing else to it, and it was made by TSR, and it had the logo on the side of the box, the TSR logo. So we happened to be in Barnes and Nobles one day, just tooling around the mall, and saw that logo on another box, which was at the time Zanzertam's Dungeon, which is kind of like a starter set for Dungeons and Dragons, basically. So we got that, and my guy that I gamed with back in the day named Tommy got it and read it and ran it, and that's where it all started. And then more and more books and games and games and games. But the funniest part about it is that my mom, who is unbelievably against gaming and Dungeons and Dragons, was in fact the one who sort of unintentionally led me into it, which is the cruel irony of the world, I guess. I don't know how you want to say that, but
Now, like my parents are probably about 10 years younger than your parents.
I was born in 55 or 54.
Okay, yeah, so 65, pretty close. And so I remember I started playing at the age of 12, right? And our next door neighbor ran this game, and he called it Dungeons and Dragons, but I don't even think we used any books. Like, I know for sure there were dice, and I had to make some decisions about a character. And that is about, I think, the extent to the guidance that we used. And I remember coming back home, and my dad, just kind of making conversation, asked us what we did while we were over there. And I told him about Dungeons and Dragons, and I was a very chatty young child, unlike now. And so I was getting ready to launch into this full dissertation to explain to him what it was we were doing. And he goes, oh yeah, I played that once in college. And then I was
Sales
just
taken away.
I was just completely shot down. Because, as you're at the preteen age, you like to think I'm completely novel
My
in all the
parents have
things that I'm
never done
doing.
this.
And they don't really understand what's going on with my life.
Right. Yeah. Well, my parents had never played D&D, but there was one main place for us to get games. Now, we grew up in a town that 30,000 people isn't super big. It's a few stores here and there. So I guess if you're starting off gaming or you want to start to game and you're younger, the barrier to entry is pretty big, because unless you can convince your parents to order the games for you on Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to go get them yourself. And I think the availability is better now because there's one, Amazon and DriveThruRPG are 2 great resources to get things from. But also, if you don't have access to those 2 or to be able to order things online, you've got to physically go to a store that has them. And then you're limited by just whatever they happen to have, which is the biggest limiting factor. Because unless you live in a large town, most places just don't have a full-line game store, right?
Right.
So that creates its own set of dilemmas. But so what we're going to kind of get in, and wait a minute, back up. And not only that, even if you are a little, I don't know what you want to say, later in life, or a little older, and you have more disposable income, maybe if you want to try gaming, it isn't, most hobbies, when you start into them, you may not just want to, dump a couple $100 on something to just try it and see, this really isn't for me, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not the easiest thing to get into, like I mentioned, because you have to course or convince. Often,
It really doesn't matter what the hobby is. I don't want to dump a couple of $100 into it.
Well, but not only that, but it's different if I wanted to start. So I decided, perfect example right here. I wanted to start 3D printing, right? I bought a 3D printer. It was about $300, and I'm off for the races. But I don't have to convince anybody else to do that with me, right?
Right.
So if I had to have like 3 or 4 friends sit around a table to stare at my printer when it did its thing, I'm not sure it would have gotten off the ground, right? Because I don't want to spend that kind of money to maybe never actually do it. I think what we're going to focus on today is those 2 main barriers. One being if you don't have the disposable income to spend on games, or if you just have the disposable income but you don't want to invest that much money into it right away, because it, in fact, may not be for you in the same way that quilting is not for me.
Have you tried it?
I learned to sew.
Did you learn to cut squares?
I think I did that in kindergarten. I think I mastered that skill. I'm going to go with a solid 50-50 on that one.
What if you combine the 2?
Yep. Nope. It's not adding fun. It's not one of those, synergism. That's the word I'm looking for. Synergistic effect, isn't that what it is? Not
I can't imagine having so much fun quilting that I got like excited about doing like, yeah, I'm gonna go quilt today. I don't think that's happening. It's not like a roller coaster.
There's not many activities that I'm involved in that I'm like, yes.
I get that way about gaming sometimes. Like, yeah, we're gonna game today.
Sure.
Yes.
Sometimes if it's been a while.
Yeah, quilting, no.
No.
That's like work.
No.
Tiny little thread needle.
Right on.
Arthritic hands.
The first thing that, besides games, I think, is all the bits and pieces, the fiddly bits you got to have to game.
Fiddly
right? And the first among those is dice. But dice are pretty easy and cheap to get a hold of. And even if you don't want to spend any money on it, you could get a die roller app for free.
You would be lame. But if you're broke, we would forgive you. Like if you're really so broke that you can't afford a set of dice and you got to have an app, I'm cool with that.
Well, there's just something visceral about having actual dice that you shake up and you blow on and put the English on when you roll it, and then you curse them.
This was like historical, right?
Because
like,
they
is
roll.
How people have been doing it for so long. Like
yeah.
some of the original games, dice games.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How cool is that?
So, but
And if you want to make yours out of actual knuckle bones, that's cool. That's cool.
just make sure they're evenly shaped so that it's fair. So find a person who has big knuckles, because that way they'll be easier to read for everyone at the table. But barring buying actual knuckle bone dice, you're looking around $7 for a set of dice.
That. I mean, like if you're going to get cremated anyway, like maybe you're already an organ donor, can you be like, I really just want my grandson to have my knuckles?
Knuckle dice? That would be kind of neat. I don't know. I'm not going to lie.
And also incredibly creepy.
Like
These are my grandfather's fingers.
It would be kind of neat, though.
Sorry, I just was distracted by the idea of that. Anyway.
Although they're not really fingers anymore. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like in...
Yeah. I don't know at what point they stop, but... I was going to say once you detach them, but they're still very solidly fingers at that point.
As long as they've got meat on them, they're fingers, I think. Once there's no more meat on them, then it's not a finger anymore. Then it's a phalange, right?
No, it's a phalange. The whole thing is the phalange.
Yeah, but in each of individual piece of phalange.
It's a phalanx if it's just one, but...
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. The more you know.
Distal, middle, and proximal phalanx. Just 3.
Fun.
In each finger, but not your thumb.
So dice.
Right. Sorry.
You're good.
Went on a tangent there.
So dice, I guess, is the first thing, and I guess you could do it with one set of dice at the table, but as things usually go, if it's something you're going to pursue, that's how you tell when a person is like kind of really becoming their own gamer, is when they're buying their own set of dice. So, and which usually comes with a dice bag and all that kind of stuff, but
fair amount of superstition.
Yes, true story.
But you can get just a regular 7 die set of your standard D&D style polyhedrals for about $7.
And you can find those. Actually, they have them at regular bookstores now. They most bookstores I see now actually just have the little classic clear plastic rectangular solid containers with D6s and then with the full-on polyhedral set. So they're pretty easy to find now. And even if you can't find those, you can get them off of Amazon, like I said. And then as well on Amazon, you can get a pound of dice, which is just...
Not a pound. 100 dice.
Okay, just a giant thing of dice.
100. I did not weigh them. I cannot vouch for their weight. For about $20 anyway.
Right. After that, there's some things that's really all you have to have is the dice, some paper and pencils, a working imagination, some friends, and the books.
Again, if you're truly broke, consider buying your pen and paper supplies during school season.
Right at the beginning of school
Notebooks, $2 for $1.
Yeah. Actually, we do that too, which is the funny part. And I always did it even before I had children, or when I wasn't in school anymore. I still around, back to school time. It was like, because they all put all that stuff at the front of the store. It's like, time to stock up on erasers and pencils and notebooks, for gaming. So it always worked out well. But in addition to that, there's a few things that are kind of fun and convenient to have. One is a dry erase board, and I think the easiest one to have is the foldable style. It looks like a bunch of note cards that are all laminated.
The note board.
Right. And it's about $12, I think. Is that on Amazon too?
I did not find it on Amazon. I looked at the regular website, so it was like $15.50 with shipping. But it comes with the marker with the little eraser on the end and the fold up thing.
Right.
There are other cheap dry erase options out there too. Like most, dollar stores sell a dry erase board, and it is, as worth about what you pay for it.
Right.
When you get it there.
The one nice thing about the note board is that on one side it is just plain clear white note cards essentially, and it opens up to be I don't know, probably 20 by
18,
3 foot. Now it's wider than that.
So the note board, 35 by 15.
Okay.
Once it's folded out.
Right. And now on one side it is just blank white paper, and then on the other side it has 1-inch squares as well as 1-inch hexes essentially. And it's nice because if you are going to play a game that involves 5-foot squares and all this kind of movement and stuff and more tactical bits of the game, then it's already right there on the back of the note board. And it's all dry erase, so you can color and fill in whatever you need. Mm-hmm. And it works really well and is portable and super durable, because I've taken ours all over the place, and it's, other than having to do a thorough cleaning of it with some baby wipes here and there, because there's always that little bit of residue left on it, it fares very well. It's works really good, and we've used the hell out of it. So
yeah. So for those of you keeping track, we're at about between $25 and $30 right now.
Then comes character sheets, and those are just more of a convenience. If you want to do them on regular paper, you can, but that's just a matter of whether you have your own printer or you have them printed at Kinko's or whatever, which is roughly, I think, 7 or 9 cents a sheet. Whatever, it's negligible.
He's such a, what's the word? Like a goody two shoes. You take that book to work and you use the
Oh, well, yeah, that's what I do. Absolutely, you copy that at work. That's right. Right on.
Brooke has option number. So depending on whether your alignment is chaotic or lawful.
But the other thing is that there are apps that are available that if you don't want to have a paper character sheet, they have apps that will work on a tablet or a smartphone that you can buy and then never have to buy another or print another character sheet for that specific game. Some of them are free. Some of them cost a couple bucks. It's just whatever you would rather do, I guess.
There's some pretty awesome character generator apps out there too. Mm-hmm. While you're out there looking at character things.
All right. After that is, if you're going to be using the more tactical combat in like a D&D style game or something like that, minis are super expensive, but there are some ways around it.
So the probably cheapest option is to draw yourself a pretty little character on your notebook paper that is small, rip it out, and stand it up.
Yep. You can make fold little tents or whatever and tape them together however you wanted to do, and it will work. If you've got anybody artistic in the group, it could be fun to just do, and well, anybody can draw little stick figure goblins,
So option number 2, again, go to the dollar store and you can find tubes of random safari animals, dinosaurs, army guys, various sundry cheap small toys.
Right.
That if you are so inclined, you can paint, but you don't have to. You can also just use markers to indicate people. Like here's a red M&M. This is Joe. Here's a blue M&M. This is Steve. And here's a yellow M&M. This is Margaret.
Now I will be the first person to tell you that using edible items to represent anything in game is a terrible idea because they will in fact get eaten.
And it might work for players if you're like, if you eat your own M&M, then you die.
I will eat them. I think we had a game where
you're
either
gone.
money or fate points or something was something edible, and I just ate them and was like, oh, well, I don't really care. I wanted to eat the candy. I mean, it is a game, but candy is real. So, But did you mention the paper minis that you can print out?
No, I did
Okay.
not.
Okay, so I'll go there next.
I said draw your own, which
Right, no,
if
yeah.
you have no skills of an artist like me, will be a stick figure standing up with a sword in its hand.
a stick sword. In addition to drawing your own, though, there are available. I know I've seen one Drive-Thru RPG before, which a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about is available there. There are printable little A-frame foldy-uppy minis that are on there, and that's actually what came in Zandertem's Dungeon years and years ago when I bought that and played it. Was they were like printed on cardstock, and you kind of folded them in half, and they had a little slot where you kind of like hooked them together, and they did just fine. I mean, they were fun enough to keep me doing this for, I don't know, almost 20 more years now, something like that. What am I, 38? Almost 30 years now. Actually, no, 30, whatever. I'm bad at math.
Another potential option is also to just steal other things you may have around your house. So you have a Monopoly game that's not being played. Looks like Brian is now represented by a shoe.
Right.
Same thing. Maybe you want to use money in your game. Steal the Monopoly money. Dice. Nobody's playing Yahtzee anyway. Go ahead and take those D6s.
I will say the Monopoly money could be a fun thing because in a Firefly game that we have had in the past, Kurt printed off credits, and it was pretty fun to actually have the paper money there. And I
It
think
was really cool.
you could
It's
have
a
the
much better
same-
system than writing it down.
Yeah, well, it's when there's something visceral about when you're handing that dollar across the table, like this $100 bill.
It just means more.
It does. It has a bigger impact. You're like, oh, because you're looking at like when you're just subtracting the money off of what you've got on the paper, it's one thing. But when you're like counting out, okay, I've got 120 credits. Now I'm going to spend 80. Oh man, we've got to buy fuel, and all this stuff. It's got a more emotional attachment when you're actually handing something over. So lots of fun and potential there. All right. Essentially, that's really the fundamental pieces that you need besides the actual gaming books. And we're going to talk about some ways around getting too much money spent on gaming books here in a minute. But one thing that I think is important to mention that we actually don't have on our list here is if you're getting these things initially, chances are you're probably going to be the one to run the game. I think that's fair to say. And I think one of the most important pieces of gaming is, not even one of, the most important piece of gaming is creating interesting stories. And maybe they don't have to be super dramatic and involved. If you're going to run a fantasy classic Conan style game of beating the experience out of the bags of treasure, that's great, but you've got to have something to go along with it, right? And so I think it comes down to finding inspiration, and a lot of that, I think the easiest way to digest that is by watching TV and movies. And
I disagree entirely.
Well, in terms of time invested, I think, because if you want to find some inspiration for a fantasy game, you could spend 3 god awful days reading a Tolkien book, or you could just watch the movie in 3 hours.
Tolkien book.
I had to get another shot at Tolkien because Kurt's not here. So
You could read an actual historical book. You could look through, maybe you want to have like a more deserty Middle Eastern theme
I think it depends on
or
what
an ancient Egypt game. Like
whatever
you could flip
kind
through
of
a book
game
like
you're
that pretty
doing.
easily.
Whatever type of game you're doing, that's just where you need to find the inspiration for it. And I think
I'm not against watching TV or movies. I think it's a good place to start. But once you get into researching your game, a great resource is your local library. Like you can look at all the books you want there for free. Almost every library there is, if you don't have your own printer or copier, they have one you can use there. You can make black and white copies for about 10 cents a piece. So you can get maps there. You can get buildings there, layouts of a town there. All those things you can find there if you're looking in the right place.
Right. As well as that, your Uncle Google will tell you anything you want to know. But I think what I'm talking about is trying to match kind of tone and theme, and watching. The way my games are structured a lot now is sort of episodic, and how I try to pay attention to the rise and fall of the momentum of a TV show, or if you want to look at more movies, how you have like serialized movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pay attention to that and finding the high beats and low beats and trying to envision the story that you want to tell kind of mimicking that. Now, you can't script everything because players are going to goof it up for you, but I think inspiration is an important thing to pay attention to, and I don't think it can be overlooked in terms of time invested and ability to go find that inspiration, whether that's just you're subscribed to Netflix or Hulu or whatever. So.
And if you're watching or reading something obscure, feel free to steal ideas. Just flat out take them. If there was something that viscerally impacted you, I feel like we've used that word like 4 times, but if there was something in the movie that you saw that was like, oh man, that was amazing, I did not see that coming. If you're pretty sure that nobody else in your gaming group has watched said movie, just take it.
Well, another fun thing to do is to take things from different genres. So like the best example I always think of it is
romance.
No. Is The Magnificent Seven.
Okay.
Is
what
a
movie is
samurai movie. It's a Western.
Oh, okay.
And it comes from the Seven Samurai. And they transpose that into a Western movie. Now, granted, a lot of the themes of a samurai shogun movie are very similar to themes in a Western, but those stories...
Western is kind of a good one. I don't know. Like, it just lends itself very well to like odd genre mashups. You see it like in Westworld. You have your sci-fi Western mashup. Unforgiven is definitely not a spaghetti Western. That is a Western drama mashup right there.
It's very gritty.
I'm sure there's probably a Western horror out there too.
The reason being, I think, is because in a lot of Western, there's this black-white morality and dichotomy that exists in that genre, and it fits very well into gaming, I think, very easily. So, it's just an easy place to mine for ideas. So, all right. That was kind of a little bit of a tangent there, but I just think if we didn't mention spending time and effort and maybe a couple bucks here and there on the Redbox or Netflix for inspiration, we'd be way, way, way off track and making sure that that's something that doesn't get overlooked. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah. You can get movies at the library too. True
story. A couple things to mention real quick before I get into specific games. One great resource for loads of game titles where I have actually I fund almost every single one now is called Bundle of Holding. So if you just go to bundleofholding.com, it's a charitable thing where it's all PDFs. So you have to have a smartphone or a tablet of some kind to be able to use them on, or a computer, but you can get loads of titles, sometimes a complete or nearly complete game line for $20-$30 or whatever, and that money goes to charity, which is a really cool thing to do anyway.
Solidly like well-known games.
Yeah.
So like Lamentations of the Flame Princess was on there with multiples of their books. The
Vampire the Masquerade has been on there.
Masquerade, Pilgrim Press.
Trail of Cthulhu was on there.
That's what I was looking
Knights
for.
Black Agents has been on there.
Yeah.
Basically, if you can think of a game, it's probably been on there. I'm not sure I've seen 5th edition on there yet, but generally speaking, there are games that are not necessarily super old, but they're not really brand new anymore either.
So things are generally put on there in tiers. So you have like a $6 buy-in will get you these 3 things. If you want to spend $15, you can get these 7 things. If you want to spend $25, you can get these 30 things.
The Bundle of Holding only has 2. That you're thinking of Humble Bundle.
Oh,
which is,
my bad.
Yeah. So that's a video game thing, which is similar. But so with the Bundle of Holding, there's only 2 tiers. There's an entry level tier, which gives you generally between 3 and 5 books, and then there's if you go beyond the average pledge, it gives you everything, which is a lot of books, usually 14, 15 books, depending.
Point being, you kind of have some agency in how much money you want to spend to get those things.
But it's a huge discount from what you would buy the PDFs normally. But like I said, you've got to have a tablet, a smartphone, or access to a computer to be able to use them. But awesome resource. In addition to that, there is Drive-Thru-RPG, which we already mentioned, and they are a great resource for PDFs and print books as well. But if you're looking to save money on a game that you think you may or may not try, Drive-Thru-RPG has loads of PDFs there. And in addition to that, they have a lot of pay-what-you-want resources. So it's you get to choose what you pay them, and I usually, depending on what it is, I may, $1 or $2, because whatever, and then I check it out. And actually, just some of them where I was really unsure of them, I got it, downloaded it, for nothing, and then was like, I really like this. And then in order to support the producer, I went back and got it again and spent, $2, $3, $4 or whatever. So there's a lot of free resources on there, but a lot of pay what you want as well. And they run the gambit from full games to little bits and pieces of stuff in here and there.
And while we're geared at helping you have a good time for less money, please keep in mind that people work really hard to make these things.
It is a lot of work.
So if you're not sure about something and you can get it for free and you try it out and you love it, like show them some monetary support farther down the road, like when you're able, or, try this thing out for free and then buy something that they've made because the first thing was awesome.
Yeah. And more importantly, what we're talk about a lot of games here, and we're not advocating to pirate games at all because, like Lacey said, it's a lot of work to produce these things. A lot of work by a lot of different people goes into them. And most people that are designing these games aren't doing it full time. They're doing it as a labor of love. So they're creating the products that you enjoy to play, to bring yourself and your friends enjoyment, that they're making and spending a lot of time and effort to not really get paid a whole lot of money.
I think something else worth mentioning too, a lot of these like print and play PDFs or pay what you want or download and print for free, you're getting all of the content to play this awesome game. But if you actually enjoy it and you make it the investment in buying the actual book, you get a ton of beautiful artwork that you're not getting when you get those kind of print and play things.
Right.
So what else we got?
Well, I guess one other small thing to mention real quick is if you do download these things and you get these pay what you want, the producers of these things, they see how many downloads they get. So if you're supporting them and downloading these things, even if you're downloading free products and you like them and you review them, it's going to, ideally, it would tell the designer, hey, I should make more of this stuff. And maybe instead of producing something small that's free, I produce something that's a larger project that's maybe a couple, $10, $15 or whatever. So
gaming is kind of a weird industry, right? Because like it's big, but it's so small.
Yeah.
So it's a place where if you really enjoyed something that you played, if you reach out to the person that made that, like they, pretty much everybody has a Twitter handle now, just hit them up and be like, hey, I really love this thing that you did. Good job, you. Like, they're going to appreciate that.
Yeah.
And they're probably actually going to see it.
Well, it's kind of crazy because I didn't, like, you always hear how small the industry is in a way and how accessible a lot of the game designers are, but I didn't really realize it until we started doing this podcast. And I started talking to some different people and was like, oh, we're just a couple idiots, behind a couple microphones, and I barely have half a clue what I'm doing. And they're all these designers and artists and everything, they're all right there. And they're super, I don't know what the right word is. They're super eager to be in touch with people that are enjoying their stuff. As long as you're polite and not being a turd about it, everybody is.
That's pretty much life in general.
That's true.
Like if you tell somebody you like their stuff and you're not an asshole, they're probably going to be appreciative.
Right. All right. Well, why don't we actually get into some actual game books and talk about being able to actually play games and make stories?
All right. I like it.
So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the
I would like to start just by saying that the reason that I thought of this topic is because there are a lot of very popular gaming systems that kind of come right to mind. So your Dungeons and Dragons, your Hackmaster, your Pathfinders, those big fantasy games. And they are, I feel like, designed in such a way to make you spend more money. And that's not necessarily a criticism. Like, they're a company.
Right.
That is what they're there for. If they don't do that, then they don't make money and they don't get to keep being a company. But so, I'm not intimately familiar. I know there's like the Hackmaster and then the Hacklopedia and all that, but I'm not terribly familiar with those systems. But Dungeons and Dragons, I played when I was younger and played for many years. And you can certainly play that game with just the player's handbook. And they have made entry into that game much better over the years. It's become easier, I feel like, to get into it. But there's still this like, okay, I have the player's handbook, but there's all these extra resources in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And I feel like I could really have that and it would make things easier. Okay, well, now I've got this one. Well, if I had the Monster Manual, that would really, really make things easier. And now I am, nearly $100 deep in these books.
No, more than that, actually. You're probably, if you buy the three main books, it's about $120 to $150, depending on tax, title, and license and all that stuff. But
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas there are a lot of other games out there where it's like, I buy this book, this is what there is. This is everything that I need. It's all concisely here, and it's easy.
Right. I agree. D&D and Pathfinder are the two biggest that I am aware of as far as I know in terms of reach and amount of players. But they have a very large barrier to entry, which is that, generally speaking, you can do it with just the player's handbook, but it is not easy. And I think it's a lot easier to build better stories and have better enemies to fight and all that, and an easier time of running it if you have players, dungeon masters, and the monster guide, right? But that's a fair amount of money to get into.
And we did, and okay, so while I can hate on these systems and that kind of thing, and I'm really not trying to be crappy about them, because the other thing that I think is important to mention is they're still the biggest draw of new players that are coming into the RPG community. Like, you may not know anything about RPGs, but you've heard of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. In fact, most people say, I play role-playing games. Oh, you mean Dungeons and Dragons?
Right.
Well, no.
And there is something to be said for that.
Right.
Because nobody else, not nobody else, but the majority of people are not going to be buying these other awesome games if they haven't heard of this one.
Right. Okay, so leaving those ones aside because they are...
Well, don't leave them completely aside, because before we leave, D&D does have a couple of things that are good. So you can buy, you can download the free basic rules for D&D.
Right.
Now, that's good. Something they've done.
Oh, yeah.
There's also the D&D Beyond, which is their website, and without even having to download them, it's a pretty easy and fairly user-friendly internet page, and you can kind of just click on what you're looking for. So like, I want to find spells or whatever, and they're all in alphabetical order, the ones from the basic rule set, and there's a fair amount of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find the spell you're looking for, click on it, and we'll show you the rules for that spell, which is nice. And if you have a bunch of players that have, they all have their own tablet or their own computer or whatever, they can pull up, I'm playing the wizard. So now I have these spells right in front of me on this electronic device, whereas before you're trying to pass the one book that you've all managed to scrape together to buy around the table, or maybe somebody, actually spent the money to get the arcane spell book or whatever, and they're flipping through this book that they also had to buy. You can at least get those basic things for free from the D&D company now.
Right.
So
I know you focused a lot on D&D or, 5th edition, but Pathfinder is follows kind of like the exact same thought process, and they have a player's, a DM, and a monster guide as well. So it has the same issues we kind of mentioned before with D&D, with that barrier to entry. So not to harp on that too much, but the same problems surround that around those games as well. I guess following in the fantasy D&D vein, I think we'll do talk about some old school games next. So
I feel like everybody's expecting us to say LOTFP first, so I'm going to say you can get the Black Hack.
Well, first I think we should explain what OSR is. So Old School Renaissance is what OSR stands for. And for those of you that don't know, or Dungeons & Dragons has gone through many, many, many editions. And the very, very first editions were very simple, and it was about challenging the players and making the players solve problems as opposed to trying to get into the mindset of your character. It was more about challenging the players and making them solve problems and riddles and that kind of stuff, and challenges in the dungeon and whatever through the character, essentially, right? And high lethality, lots of character death, they kind of describe it as a funnel, right? And with lots of low-level characters at the top of the funnel, and then high-level characters at the bottom of the funnel, because it takes a lot of low-level characters to get to that high-level one. That way you really appreciate it when you finally get that 10th and 15th level wizard, fighter, or whatever it is, right? So the first one Lacey mentioned is the Black Hack, which uses all your regular polyhedrals, and it is a classic fantasy D&D style game. Very streamlined rule set, very simple, super clean, super easy to do, lays it all out for you right there. I believe it's $2 on DriveThruRPG, and you can print it out on like a booklet style on a regular printer, or you could go to have it printed off if you wanted it, if you don't have a printer or whatever.
And it's been out for a couple of years now. I believe it won an ENnie at some point.
We haven't actually played regular Black Hack, but we did. If you go back, there's a review we did of Kaigaku, which is it's an Asian kind of Japanese setting for it, and we had a great time playing it, and it felt very much like that D&D feel without all the extra skill points and all that kind of stuff added to it. And we had it was me, Kurt, and Greg, and we had a great time with it. I think Lee was in on that game as well. And we had a great time with it. So I can say it's a lot of fun. I haven't played the regular Black Hack. I've played another setting for it essentially, but we had a great time and it was a lot of fun to play.
And the Black Hack has been around long enough now that there are some different settings available for it.
Yep. And those are all available on drive-thru as well. After that is a free one called Maze Rats, and this is one of my favorite ones because this is a game that was designed by a school teacher, I believe, for his 5th or 6th grade students, and he play tested a whole lot of it with all these 5th and 6th grade students. So I think that's a really cool thing to see, just a teacher doing that, kind of bringing, obviously I haven't yet to meet a teacher that wasn't burned out, that didn't get into teaching because of a passion for teaching children and that kind of stuff, and then to bring your passion for gaming into it and actually build a game.
Some of those gym teachers
for it.
I mean,
but super cool,
passion for dodgeball,
easy game, and yeah, they're free is the right price. So if you're looking for something easy to check out, Maze Rats is there, and it's also got a lot of really cool random charts to roll on. So if you're not sure what characters to generate or what bad guys or monsters or what the players should be doing, there's loads of tables to just roll on and let it see what happens, and the chips fall where they may.
Okay. And I think probably that's going to bring us to Lamentations of the Flame Princess.
Right.
So this company, I guess you want to call it, has won multiple ENnie awards with their games, and there's a very good reason for that. They are quality games, but the core rulebook is very concise and very user-friendly, and you can download it for free. You won't get any of the wicked cool art, which is worth buying the book for when you have the money. But as we established, you're broke or just wanting to try this out. So you can download it for free and play it just like that.
Right. One of the cool things about it is it's not very thick. That's one of the big barriers to entry for like a lot of games, is that it's a 400 pages that you've got to read through of stereo instructions to understand how to make this game and all the moving pieces work together so it doesn't grind to a stop and no one's having fun anymore. Lamentations
is a fair thing that people take into account either, because they're like, oh, well, this book is only $20, but it's 400 pages and how many hours of my life? Like,
well, yeah,
you're not taking into account the human cost that I'm paying to get to know this rule system.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a different argument when I was 12, 13 years old trying to figure that out.
I'm old.
As opposed to now.
I'm not going to live that much longer.
Yeah, I think I have a harder time with that. So
my time is precious.
Alrighty. So it's no secret we are big fans of Lamentations of the Flame Princess here. They've got loads of great adventures and settings out there, award-winning settings and award-winning adventures. So they are well worth it if you're looking for something with quality, something that's a little different, that weird
fantasy
role playing, I think is what it says on the book. Yeah. Some stranger elements to the game. It can be a lot of fun. So, all right, after that, I think Fate is the one that comes up in my mind next, and both versions of Fate Accelerated and Fate Core, are both available. The downloads for free at Evil Hat Games, and they are essentially the same game, which is a modification on how the skills work, essentially. So they're really the same thing, but Fate is one of my favorite games, and if you're looking to tell more story-focused games, this is probably, I think, one of the best places to start.
Right, and there are multiple different versions of Fate that are out there, but when you buy the Fate Core book, everything you need is there, and you don't feel like you have to have anything else. It is there. You can do a limitless amount of things with it, with absolutely no, feeling of forced expenditure to do more. Right.
And the hardback book of Fate Core, I think is only $20 or $25. I think is what we paid for it at Gen Con. So it's very reasonably priced for a hardback book. But like I said, you can get the PDF for nothing. And Evil Hat as a company has the promise that if you buy a hard copy of one of their books anywhere, if you send them a copy of the receipt, they will make sure that you get the PDF for the book as well. So that's a really cool thing, because it's one of the ways that those companies can support gaming stores, is to make sure that you still can get the PDF for the game.
And I know we talked about dice earlier, but if you have downloaded the Fate book, you have $0 to spend, you can turn a set of 6-sided dice into fudge dice, Fate dice, what have you. You don't have to have the specific Fate dice.
Right.
You can do it with what you've already got.
All right, so after Fate comes, in my mind, Powered by the Apocalypse games. They were just on Bundle of Holding not too long ago, and in my mind, if you want a game to start with and you have very little experience playing RPGs, I think Apocalypse World or any of the different versions of it are a great place to start, because it does genre so well. So if you think, I want to play Mad Max the RPG, then you go get Dungeon World. You go get Apocalypse World. If you want to play Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you go get Monster Hearts, right? If you want to play
an awesome game, you go get Spirit of 77.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to play, what's it called?
Nonsense in the 1970s.
Starsky and Hutch, you go buy
Spirit of 77.
Or Boogie Nights.
Right. So this is one of the easiest games to get into, because you don't even need any abstract dice that you may have to special order or go pick up somewhere. If you've got a Monopoly board in your house or a Sorry board in your house, guess what? You've got the dice for it.
Yeah, and it only takes 2 D6. That's
2 D6s, and you're off to the races, and you just got to print out some stuff. One of the things that I like about Apocalypse World, though, the most for starting games, is if you print off all the resources to play the game, in terms of the cheat sheets and that kind of stuff, everything is laid out there for you. So you don't even need to reference the book once you've kind of have a good feel for it. And if you've read through it once, you print off the gaming resources for it. And both the game master and the players have basically everything they need to know right in front of them, which is another cool aspect to have when you're talking about barriers to entry. You mentioned with the player's handbook. Mm-hmm. If I'm a cleric and you're a wizard and we're trying to figure out what spell I want to cast, I have to wait for you to finish before I can look at it and all this kind of stuff, and it just bogs things down. So it's nice to have a game that's been designed with having those resources in front of everyone without having to buy 6 books.
Yeah.
And there are a ton of different Powered by the Apocalypse games. If there's a cartel one, if you want to play something like Narcos, if you want to run booze during the Prohibition, there's one that's called Bootleggers.
If you want to play a semi-Victorian age in the post-apocalyptic darkness, there's Blades in the Dark.
Right. There's just loads and loads of different versions of Apocalypse World games, essentially. And I will guarantee you can find one that fits you. And Apocalypse World, I believe, has been on the Bundle of Holding twice now, because I've done it. I've funded it twice because there was different games on there that I had hard copies of, but not PDFs of. So it's out there. It's easy to get a hold of, and I'm sure it'll be on the Bundle Holding again. So
it's also on DriveThru RPG.
Yeah, it is as well.
It's there. You can find it.
Yeah.
Normally it's about $20, but if you keep your eyes open and you're there at the right time, it could be less than that.
Right. All right, so a couple quick other ones to hit is Gumshoe, so your Trail of Cthulhu, your Night's Black Agents. If you want something a little deeper and investigative, they are out there. The one nice thing about Trail of Cthulhu, though, is that you only need the one book. It's just one book and you're off to the races. If you get the hard copy, I think it's about $40. The PDF is $20. The additional books are nice to have, and there's lots of great resources in them, but they're not required. So if you have the mindset to put together mystery investigation stuff, and you like the Cthulhu horror universe and cosmic horror, it's right there for you, and it's only one book. And they have done free RPG Day stuff here and there, so it's free RPG Day. Free RPG Day will be here before you know it, and have to check out and see if they have anything in it this year.
So, are we done with RPG games?
I think so.
I just want to mention the one big, giant money pit for the gaming industry, aside from all the other books and wonderful things you might buy. Miniature gaming.
Oh, yeah.
Will bankrupt a person like nobody's business. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the Fantasy Flight Star Wars, if you're talking about Games Workshop Warhammer 40K miniatures, if you're talking about weird miniatures, the Malifaux game, Dust. Who makes Dust? I forget.
Dust Industries.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're talking about Dust miniature gaming, there is potentially an endless amount of money to be spent there. So we did do. I just kind of asked James because I don't even know. I'm not big on the miniature gaming. I've played Malifaux. I've played the old D&D miniatures game. I've played Dust miniatures a couple of times, but usually it's not my big thing. Neither is painting the miniatures. I don't know. Some people think that's therapeutic. I feel like I would probably just like, and here's a glob of purple. Yeah. But there is one, apparently, miniatures game that you can actually buy the downloads for and print with a 3D printer, which does not sound like it would be cheaper until you actually look into how much it's going to cost you to print that miniatures army that you really, really want to have and is competitive worthy, because that initial squad that costs $20 is not going to get it done for you.
No. Right. So it's called World War Tesla by Fat Dragon Games. They also make the Dragonlock and Dragon Bite terrain pieces that are all interlock and stuff. And I'm a big fan of their products. I supported their very first Kickstarter, and I haven't gotten World War Tesla yet. I read some reviews that it was good. There were a few critiques of it that I saw that they wish they had some scenarios put into the game or whatever, but that's easily manageable on your own. So as far as I know, there are lots of other games out there that are beginning to put out some resources that you can print on your own, but none that are strictly, you don't buy game pieces, you buy files to print yourself. So they are the first one to do it, and I think it's really cool.
My only other suggestion for miniature gaming is if you're somebody who can afford to go to a convention, that is probably the best place to find discounted miniatures.
Yeah.
Because they usually have bins of, these are the outdated ones, or these are the ones that some, like me, started to paint and it turned out terrible. So if you have the time to strip it, reprime it, repaint it, then have at, they're, so much cheaper than you would normally get if you bought the new box set.
So one thing real quick, we would be remiss if we didn't mention World of Darkness. And
what's that?
Most of the World of Darkness games now, in terms of the original World of Darkness, have a 20th anniversary out now. So if you are looking to start playing Vampire the Masquerade, there's a V20 book that has all of the meta condensed into one giant book. Now it's huge, but you can use one little bit and piece here and there as you kind of, find your way through that book. And there's Werewolf 20, there's Mage 20, Wraith 20 should be coming out here very soon, which I'm super excited for. So there is, if you're looking to tell a more involved political, backstabby horror story, then there are resources for you with Vampire, Werewolf, or Mage right now. Mm-hmm. And like I said, all of those, there are so many World of Darkness books, but those 20th anniversary books kind of condense everything down into one thing, and they're available on drive-thru, and you can get hard copies or PDFs of them as well.
The new edition, I'm sure, is going to be awesome, but the older editions have been around for a long time, and they are solidly good games. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't look at it and be like, oh, well, they're going to fix all the bugs in the new, in the new edition. Like, the old games are definitely worth picking up and playing if that's where your budget is at. And that goes for just about any of these games. Like, if they've come out with a second edition, Monster Hearts has a second edition now, Apocalypse World has a second edition. So if you can get the first edition on the cheap, those games are still awesome.
Right. The other thing is, we forgot to mention, you talk about getting hard copies of books cheaper. We have half-price books near us, so I don't know where everybody else is at, but our half-price books stores...
I'm going to say, though, half-price books has not saved me any money.
Well, it's because we keep buying things. It just means
that I can buy twice as many books.
Fair enough. But they have lots of RPG books at the ones at least around us. Now, I've only been to 3 different half-price books now, all in the Indianapolis area, and they all have a pretty good RPG selection. So
their company, though, is actually based out of Texas. So there's several of them across the country. Yeah. If you have one, definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's one of those interesting things. I kind of collect RPG books as well, so you never know what you're going to kind of run into. It's one of the reasons why I like going to that collector aspect of it. So
we just I just bought Mutant Year Zero at Half Price Books a couple months ago for my little brother for Christmas.
So right on. Well, I know there's probably a lot to digest if you guys are new gamers, and if you're
wait, so I think our summary should be the absolute ultra cheap option. Bare bones minimum, print and play a game for nothing, absolutely free, depending on if it's LOTFP or Fate. Both of those, print for nothing, solid games. The cost of dice, if you have to buy them, which is about $7, a notebook and a pencil, probably going to run you maybe $2. Right. So we're talking endless hours of fun, $10 or less.
Done.
Boom.
Make your own movies and stories. Right on. So I know we kind of all over the place, and if you're not familiar with gaming, this may be a lot to digest at one time, but we'll put some links in the show notes for some resources for where you can find some of these games, and hopefully we'll make this a little bit easier for everybody else to navigate, because like Lacey said before, gaming is kind of a small industry, but at the same time, there's a lot there. It's a very niche industry, but there are a lot of pieces there, and some of them are very complicated, and there's a lot of moving components to each individual game. So hopefully this will help you and lower the barrier of entry. And maybe if you know someone who might enjoy gaming, this can help you to kind of either share this episode with them or point them in the right direction for some things that might make it easier for them to get into.
If you have like a gaming club. I mean, teachers are chronically broke people. So for less than $10, you can get some kids at the school gaming.
Right. Absolutely. Right on. Will, do you have anything else?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think I have anything else easier. I think this has actually been interesting to see and look at this.
Wait, I do have one more thing.
Oh, what?
There are literally tons of RPG podcasts that you can listen to absolutely for free to get gaming advice, story advice, listen to other people run actual plays to see how the game works. And somebody on Twitter just did the new GM thing was all this month. Oh,
new GM month.
Yeah, new GM month was this month. So there is a ton of advice out there right now for new GMs coming in to the gaming industry. All of that available completely for free.
Right on. So we'll pretend we did this for New GM Month. How's that? Boom! Right on. So hopefully this will help you guys. I'm saying this again for the second time now, but I really, really hope it does help someone out there to lower the barrier of entry for RPGs, because when I started talking to some people about 3rd edition, when they transitioned to 5th edition, I realized how hard and complex it was if you started off without any gaming experience playing 3rd edition. It was terribly a technical game in terms of if you want to look at how it was put together for games. And I love the game. It's a great game. But if you were just coming into it with no experience, it was a huge, daunting task to take on. So there are lots and lots of other games that are out there that will make that process easier for you to get started and up and off the ground and telling stories. And that's really what the most important thing of it is that tell good stories that everybody around the table enjoys, because no matter what any advice anybody gives you, our rule here has always been that if everyone around the table is having fun, then you're doing it right. There's a lot of people that want to argue and tell you how to play games and the right way to play games, but the only right way to play the game is to make sure that everyone is having fun. And outside of that, it doesn't matter. The rest of it is just fluff, right?
Yeah.
So right on. I guess that'll do it for us. Hopefully you guys will get something useful out of this. If you are a gamer and you know already, and you know other resources that are easy to get a hold of or available to get a hold of on the cheap, let us know. Comment below on the episode, or hit us up on Twitter or email me, and we'll be more than happy to share those to try and get some more games out there to people that want to try and start into the world of gaming. Other than that, you guys can support us online at patreon.com and join us there for some additional raw content and early access to episodes, as well as our actual plays that will be coming out here pretty soon. And you can find that at patreon.com/justonemorefix. That's all one word. You can also support us by going to wherever it is you find your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Google Play or Spotify, and giving us a rating and a comment there. As always, you can support us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix. I think that'll do it for us. And as always, we will see you guys next week. Quick plug for one of the Gonna Geek podcasts, Pop Culture Cosmos. Multiverse episode number 48. We're counting down the Marvel movies with our thoughts as we lead into Black Panther. We bring you the latest news and trends of pop culture right here on the Pop Culture Cosmos show and the PCC Multiverse, which you can listen to today on the Gonna Geek Network.
Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can find us at justonemorefix.com and follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.